realize the Bank of Ghana, in and of itself, says that we are still policy solvent and we can proceed in doing business. What is the perspective of the experts outside of all of this? Let's get that right now from Nana Anyimadu Bequin, who's joining us via the phone line. So I appreciate you for joining us. I trust that all is well with you.
All is well. How about you? Good morning.
We're also doing well. Thankful to God for the gift of life. I believe you've seen the report. If you haven't, I'll be surprised. But you may have as well read the full details in the news, online portals, and what have you. Would you say the share amount in terms of the losses surprised you? Let me start from there.
What surprised me to begin with, it's not just the sheer amount of the losses, but the sort of controversy that came around how the Bank of Ghana publicized that report. What we were used to traditionally was the central bank publishing it through its own means before every comment or every public comment would be activated. But we realized that this one came through the majority side in Parliament, making some comment on that before the central bank released it. I think that itself was a surprise. But then the figures itself, compared to previous years, one would have thought that the central bank was on a trajectory to recover from the catastrophe of 2023, 2022. And rather, we're seeing a deepening of it, because equity, losses, and all of these were worse in previous years. And what we had said is that the Bank of Ghana is going to move away from that trajectory. It would be surprised, that we would wake up to find that in rather a reset or in rather a regime where we want to correct the excesses of the past, we are deepening the troubled times that we saw earlier.
For the many who've seen the report, and I've read excerpts of the report as well, what is very clear, particularly from the Bank of Ghana, is that this is the cost of the reduction in inflation, the performance of the city, and a host of other significant interventions undertaken to ensure that there was a certain ease and availability of capital to businesses and private individuals to access from the banks. This is the cost that we're seeing, and so the criticism which should greet a 15.6 billion headline loss of such a nature must be tamed and rather be looked at from within that perspective. Would you agree?
Well, the point is the economic target or the economic management target will always come at a cost. And it will be disingenuous of anyone to suggest that there will be no cost to bear in pursuit of any of our economic targets or any of our governance targets. But the question is, at what cost? Because the end does not justify the means in economics. If you cost the debt of, say, 500 billion cedis, and you are posting the GDP of so and so, or you're posting inflation of near 0% or whatever, you will not be justified because you have baked in the effect as we desired. The cost itself is also counterproductive, because 16.7 billion cedis or 15.5 billion or 34 billion cedis in cost to achieve inflation, a slower inflation or a relatively less sticky price situation, is not justifiable. And in as much as that is a policy desire, I think that the cost that we are being awakened to, or we are being told, is not cost effective. And that point should not be downplayed as though we've achieved the target and it's enough.
what approach, in your estimation, would have been best to avoid a headline loss of the nature that we've seen and still have achieved the results which we've seen?
Let's ask, what has been the trajectory in the past? From 2023, we have realized, by looking at the Bank of Ghana's figures and by observing and monitoring what the Bank of Ghana has been doing this year, that after the situation got worse, and 54% inflation, headline inflation by the beginning of 2023, the Bank of Ghana went aggressive into the open market operations and spent 8 billion cedis in that particular year. The end effect was that by December 2023, the Bank of Ghana had reduced inflation by 30 percentage points. That's from 54% to about 23%, spending an amount in the region of 8 billion cedis plus other toolkits. The Bank of Ghana, through the Monetary Policy Committee, decided that with that, just giving incentives to banks to hand over their liquidity will give you some slower monetization or slower growth of the M2 or the M1. But the effect is that you will have stagnated the capital market or the credit market, because the central bank is attractive enough to attract the bank's money, rather than giving it to credit or giving to capital to private individuals or the productive sectors to expand their businesses. And so one would expect that if 8 billion cedis was expended in previous years to achieve a certain amount, why would we go 16 billion cedis to move from 23% to 5% in December? It begs question. And so what did the previous Bank of Ghana regimes or the Monetary Policy Committees do that seemed to be absent in the situation that cost us so much for just even the open market operation? And the situation is such that the Bank of Ghana was nearly rendered policy insolvent had they not liquidated half of our gold reserves to generate an income of about 9.57 billion cedis by the fourth quarter of 2025. The central bank management in previous years or the previous year decided that as part, together with the aggressive open market operations, they were also going to attack the cash reserve mechanism or portfolio of the banks, such that banks that had funds that were quote unquote ideal would not be given excess incentives to bring them to the Central Bank of Ghana, but rather they would be charged on those amounts as a reserve. So that dynamic, I'm talking about dynamic cash reserve policy, cash reserve ratio policy that the central bank was practicing, where if you are lending to, the more you lend, the lower reserve that is expected of you as a bank. And then you will be forced as a bank to either utilize your funds in the credit market or find more productive ways of using your, without it being a cost on the central bank. So the central bank would also attract these monies without paying interest on them. And these tools, we think the central bank should relook at them, because headlining 16.7 billion cedis, 15 billion cedis, 20 billion cedis in open market operations to maintain a very disciplined inflation will rather serve the productive economy of its fluid.
That's how you see it.
That is how it's clear, it's plain. You don't need to reread economics to understand that the incentives we gave to the banks to keep the money at Bank of Ghana so that we will bring inflation to the 8% band, especially when the predictions and projections had already hinted that in 2025, by December, inflation should cool. The price stability would be given at a certain extent. I think we far spent in realizing what was going to happen, or what was supposed to be not a walk in the park per se, but what was supposed to have come in eventual sense.
Let me get on to the other phone line. Senor Jose is an economy and policy analyst as well. Is joining us via the phone lines for a quick conversation in relation to this. Mr. Jose, I appreciate you joining us as well. This open market operation, which saw the bank dole out 16.7 billion cedis in terms of profits to the banks, according to Mr. Anyimedu, is one that we could have looked at differently.
According to who?
Mr. Anyimedu, who is on the phone lines with me as well. He's an economist and a financial expert as well. He believes this could have been done differently. But you are of the opinion this was an investment. An investment in what way?
What did he say could be done differently? And what different did he think? Different policy option did he recommend? I'm sorry, I may have missed that.
Mr. Anyimedu.
Yeah, Marion, I'm here. I'm listening to you. So,
Yeah.
you know, if we were observing or we were monitoring what was happening in the previous regime until the central bank under Governor Asiama reversed the cash reserve, the dynamic cash reserve. Yes, and I must agree that it was after a protest by the banks. But I think that the blatant reversal of that policy gives the banks so much cash to freely bring back to the central bank in exchange of incentives or interest, which contributed to the huge cost we spent in the home.
My brother, we inched up our cash reserve ratio and put more pressure on the banks, who have depleted their own assets thanks to the DDEP. You made the banks take that hit, and you come back and hit them this way. I mean, how reasonable can we be that one want to continue to run that policy? You want one set of institutions to just carry the weight for the most part. It's not reasonable. It's not sustainable. If you have an investment in the bank, I think you should be thinking twice. As you remember, a good number of our assets here are SNIT assets sitting in our banks. It's not reasonable. There's only a level of an extent to which you can push that. There are three key risks that you suck up liquidity from a monetary policy perspective. Your cash reserve, you are right, is one. But they have done that already. Where were we? And even under doing that, look at still the level of home operations that were run. It was still necessary. But even doing those home operations, we're not able to even slow down the growth of reserve money. Did we make progress? Rather, yanked it up to 104.5%. Please, let's be balanced about these things. I mean, it's not politics for me, and I don't think it's politics for him. I know you're saying, I don't know him, but he's a professor. I don't believe it's politics for him either. But let's just stay focused on the fact. All right, we've been racking up our reserve money, our base money, in the last 24 months prior to 2025. In that same period, we're still running more operations. How effective was it? It helped managing prices, but it didn't help transform and create the depth of stability we required. All this government has done is actually built on the learnings of the past. And that learnings of the past were also built also on mistakes of the past. It's one of the boldest decisions we've ever seen a central bank deliver. And the results are out there for all of us to see. Economic policy outcomes are not commercial outcomes. There's a clear target. We don't just jump and start spending money. Anytime the Bank of Ghana spends money, then it's a policy matter. No. What was it seeking to correct? How did we get here? If we did not end up with a deviation of about 3.1% of GDP in our primary balance, we won't be here. If we had stuck to the exact plan and path to recovery in our arrangement with the IMF, and we're aiming to deliver a 0.5% surplus, we will not be here in 2024. The government failed. The fiscal created pressure. The monetary policy must shift the curve. And that's all that has been done. But it's been done boldly, very boldly. And if you've seen my paper, this is radio, anybody who's seen it, go look at the graph. You don't need to be an economist to see the impact. How attacking growth of reserve money so aggressively has impacted inflation. But that's not the only option that was on the table. Because sucking up liquidity from a market is not only just about running more operations. At the heart of it all, the only thing that the central bank can ever do is to deal with what we call base money. It's the only thing it can do. The rest will be reactionary. All the way to broad money. Let's balance this. the domestic gold purchase program and the gold board, it's a perfection of the monetary policy actions under the gold reserve program, gold for reserve program was there before. NDC has just perfected it.
It's far more costly.
That's what has happened. And when you get the gold, what do you do with the gold? You get FX. When you get the FX, you either grow your reserve or you throw it back in the market.
But even on the
When
gold,
you throw it back in the market, again, you are sucking up liquidity. You are not increasing money supply of gold because the central bank does not produce the US dollar. No. The only person who can increase money supply of gold or shift money supply of gold is the US Treasury. They deployed all the three options effectively, and the results are there for all of us to see.
The concern
are not just stable. Please, I'm coming. Prices are not just stable. The currency is stable. The currency is stable. We have liquidity, reserve money growth going down significantly, but there's still excess liquidity in the market, which has to be dealt with. When you talk about credit, you are talking about credit to come at what price? What is it that's sustainable for an economy? So you continue to say, hey, let's throw more money at credit, let's create more credit, let's drive up more inflation, and then what will be the interest cost to businesses? If you run a business, you'll be thinking about what you just said. I mean, it wasn't sustainable. We ran down the economy. We have to pay the price for fixing it. And if we fixed it, the key thing here is that how do we make sure we put in controls so we don't run down the economy again and come into a situation where we have to spend so much?
Fair.
There are clear policy directions that have been realized and have been communicated. The gold board cost in there, which is this gold, the domestic gold purchase program,
which was a 9.1 billion.
9 billion.
Yeah.
That is not ideally an expense that should continue to sit on the central bank. The fiscal should be able to control that. We have to spend that thing because we have to deal with smuggling. We are taking out the economic incentives so we deal with smuggling. But there are alternate ways to deal with smuggling. This may be your initial step. That is fine. But that is a matter for the fiscal to manage, not the central bank.
But the concern, is...
I'm wrapping up, please. I beg you, Mauna. You have that particular part now being put under the gun wrap, which will go back to the fiscal, so they should manage it themselves. So that is fine. If you have a stable currency that's stable, you won't be making FX revaluation provisions. So that 29-point-something billion will be almost out of the window. The question will now be with liquidity. The fiscal part of it, with the Ministry of Finance, must now be economically disciplined. The discipline we saw for last year, are we going to see the same discipline this year? As a minority, as a majority in Parliament, as civil society, as academics, as business persons, we need that level of discipline. Because if we don't, there will have to be reactionary steps taken by the Bank of Ghana to correct things again. We can't continue being in a state of constant correction.
Absolutely.
We have achieved stability. Our conversation now will be economic transformation, economic productivity.
Which is fair.
Productivity that translates into proper employment for our youth. Productivity that translates into real comparative competitiveness of our businesses. Productivity that transforms and opens new supply chains in our economy. That's the kind of conversation we should be having.
Absolutely.
That's what we are having here in this country.
The conversation also which is of importance is the cost to which all of this has come from. And these things you speak of are there for everybody to see. But at the heart of it as well is a gaping hole in terms of the negative equity, which has risen to about 90 something. If I can finish, which is about 90 billion cedis. There is a recapitalization drive which the government has signed an MOU with the BOG for. Which
who owns the BOG?
We the people of Ghana do, but at the heart of this is a need to recapitalize a central bank. And the question is being asked, where is that money going to come from if we continue on the trajectory in which we're on?
A reason why the United States of America can borrow in perpetuity in dollars It's because it produces the dollar. You and I cannot do that. Ghana cannot do that. Economics is not like that. It's still a policy solvent entity. Leave them to manage it. Let them correct it. It's going to be a process. It's going to be quiet and gradual, but they will recover because the tools for recovery are sitting in the arms of the central bank, together with the government of Ghana. It's not something if tomorrow morning they want to change, they can't. It's just that it comes at a certain kind of price and certain kind of inflationary reaction, but to be done progressively. That is neither here nor there. The critical thing for the central bank is to deliver the policy goals it is set for: stabilizing prices, managing the entire financial frame, but in the process remain being a going concern. Is the central bank a going concern? It is absolutely a going concern. This economy would have crashed if it wasn't a going concern. Nobody will be doing business with Ghana if the central bank is a going concern.
I'll come back to you on how this can continue to hold.
Let's get the conversation properly focused. We have spent 60 billion in 2022. Who caused it? Instead of us being retractionary in our policy making, we're rather being expansionary with our policy making. Instead of the central bank holding the fiscal space of the central government in check, it was rather helping it misbehave. We had to pay the price by that 60 billion provision. We had to continue paying the price by trying to suck up the liquidity that the 60 billion had created prior to the 60 billion itself. Look, we create problems. I won't reward you for creating a problem and say you are fixing it yourself. No. When I give somebody a problem and he fixes it, but you fix it more importantly with a clear plan that we are not going to get back here anytime soon unless something reasonable happens. Because in life, things happen.
Right.
So that's the conversation. Having done this, you've taken a bullet hit on behalf of all of us.
Let me go to Mr. Ayimedu as well.
How are they going to end this thing and make sure we don't come back here?
Absolutely, Mr. Ayimedu, you've had Mr. Hosi and the cost implications of all of this, saying that look, we need to relook how we're having this conversation because there was a problem which is being fixed and it will take some time to be fixed.
Eric, let me take this. You see, we shouldn't sound as though the problem was not being dealt with before the new Bank of Ghana management regime came in. And we should give plaudit when plaudit has been said. The Bank of Ghana is continuing a certain trajectory of dealing with inflation. Nobody worth his thought as an analyst would say almost should not be aggressively pursued. It is the extent and cost. And that is what we are saying, that if the extent and cost that we are going to pursue it, if it's going to be beyond policy solvency, then the central bank should bring in other toolkits to support it. Because in the past, same dynamic CRR that I mentioned and that has been touted was part of the toolkit that was used together with the almost cost of about 8 billion cedis to deal in the past with inflation. We began 2023 or so with 2023 January. I think we began with 54% inflation, which was terrible, we all admit. And that was slowed to about 23% by end of that year. It was these tools or these policy handles that helped in reversing the situation. And these policy handles would also be the same. I don't understand why you would have to spend a double of our almost cost in previous years to attain below, in terms of percentage, because what I was mentioning that earlier on the call, that if we had moved from 54% to about 23%, that's about 30% drop in previous years. It would have cost about 8 billion cedis. And then here we are spending about 17 billion cedis to achieve a 17% drop. Not as though the percentage drop is not important. It is. But we shouldn't shy away from the cost-benefit analysis. And that's what I think almost every analyst I've listened to this, from Professor Bokpin and the others I've listened to, and you yourself have interviewed on this platform. If you listen to them, everybody is paying attention to the cost, because it is not a cost that can be incurred in future. It is not something that can be sustained. we mentioned the gold policy because for the first time the central bank had to liquidate half of its gold holdings so that it could generate some income to remain policy solvent. Are we having that policy option tomorrow? Are we having that policy option in the future if this is the trajectory we're going? The question Senor was raising us to, we had to do this. Yes, it was being done. If you look at the trajectory of our equity, and you would see that the equity was negative all these years. But indeed, the equity position from 2023, about 65.1 billion, was reduced in 2024 to 61 billion. And one would expect that at least that trajectory should begin to reverse. The fact that the central bank should not be hailed as a profit-making business because its purpose or its reason of incorporation is not for the commercial profit should not also mean that the central bank should be a perpetual loss generation business. The state cannot accommodate that because today, as we speak, the recapitalization is at the expense of the state, and everybody on this call believes that. Everybody on this call knows that we cannot recapitalize the Bank of Ghana by the Bank of Ghana itself. The owners of the Bank of Ghana, the people of Ghana, will have to take a move to recapitalize the bank. And that move will compete with our other use of funds, our other use of the budget. If the budget of today, 2027 is to be drawn, it will have to have a certain portion being focused on the recapitalization of the central bank, because that is the duty of the people of the bank and the people of the country and its government, be the government of Ghana and the Ministry of Finance. So it is true that indeed the central bank will have to continue the trajectory of bringing inflation down.
Absolutely.
Which I mean, we are all hailing them for. But we are thinking that the cost, and look at the cost we're talking about. We're talking about a near 35.4 billion cedis worsening of equity, and that is the real loss on us. Right. We can have rationale for it, but it is a non-crisis year. This is one single year we have allowed the central bank to post 35 billion cedis loss in a rationalization of we fix inflation.
Right, gentlemen,
we will fix inflation anyway, but the cost should be discussed and the cost should be
fair point. In wrapping up briefly, because I'm a bit out of time, I'll come to you, Senor, and then I'll come back to you, and you may do on final words. I think around the table there's a general understanding that this was necessary. Ms. Anyimedu, you are raising issues about a look at the cost because it could have been less. But let me hear you, Senor.
And also a look at what other tools could have come in to make the cost.
Mana will clear a few things. That the government was already doing something about it. The central bank in 2024 was doing something about it. The government, the central government, reversed a good part of those gains. That's why you didn't feel the same value of impact, all right, on the currency side and everything, as you have seen currently. Because instead of the central government achieving a primary surplus of 0.5%, it rather ended up with a deficit of 2.6%. How are you doing something about it? For the first time in quite a while, we've had good unison between the central bank and the central government. That's what we have had. Good harmony between the fiscal side and the monetary policy side. We didn't have that in 2024. So collectively, we were not doing much about it. This time around, they've done something great about it. You talk about cost. How is OMO cost set? It is the policy rate. So if you have kept rate already elevated, it will hit you. And if you have already, instead, in 2024, of driving down the growth of reserve money, what the central bank rather did was to grow reserve money. For the most part, what do you think it will take for us to bring it down? More cost. So you can't blame somebody else and say cost, as if you can go and decide that, I'm not buying a Rolls Royce, I'm going to buy a Toyota. No, there's only one car. The car is the policy rate. Whatever is there is what is there. So it is the policy action you will take that I'm driving this down. That problem was created. How were we fixing it by rather growing reserve money? I beg you. I mean, economics is not like that. Then another thing that has been said. Please, economics is also not As simple as 8. It was 54%. I spent 8 billion. I brought it to half. So if you spend the next 8 billion, you should take it to 0. I beg you. It doesn't work like that.
It works like that, senor.
I'm sorry, my brother.
It works like that. It's cost efficient. You would not make excuses for.
Please let me finish.
Right, gentlemen, I'm hoping we can wrap up.
Yeah, please hold on. Prices are sticking downwards. That's why it is not a 1-to-1 relationship. That's why some effects.
But would you agree that for
the lower you go,
for every itemize, it's cost us more to fight inflation under this regime.
Can you imagine? For a good part of this 54% inflationary rate, our policy rate was actually giving us a real negative return for any given unit investment. But yes, it has been able to move. But at the point, we have to now move policy rates still at what? A real positive return for us to still be able to drive down reserve money.
Right.
Please. I beg you.
So Senor, just one question in wrapping up.
Accounting.
Right. You believe Senor, you believe
economics is not accounting, but economics
Mr. Ayimedu, I'll come to you and then we'll wrap up.
Economics are rather should even influence us to be more cost effective. If we're spending 16 billion alone at the Bank of Ghana,
it is not accounting.
It's an expense on the market. It's an expense on the bank. An expense on the government.
I will come
used in many other sectors.
Let me get a bit of clarity, just briefly. Senor, just one word from you as we wrap up the conversation. You believe the conversations about recapitalization as well is premature and not necessary at this point in time?
The most important thing for every country is for you to be a going concern.
And they are a going concern in that instance.
They are a going concern.
Right.
They are a going concern. As an entity, beyond a certain point, you may not be able to take some hits. Then the other bit I forgot to even touch base on. That is what we depleted half of our gold reserves. It's ridiculous.
No, it wasn't half. I think that we both know.
It doesn't even matter whether it is 2 or it is 3 or it is 1.
Right.
You are managing assets. These are all policy options in your hand. You decide to grow it, and then you cash in on it to manage the exposure you are creating.
Right.
That's strategy.
Thank you, Senor. I appreciate you. I have to wrap up the conversation.
Hold on, the reserve system. When you put the gold reserves, what does it do? The relevance of the gold reserves is it's booking your gross and your net reserve.
Well, it became FX. It became FX, and so we didn't lose. We lose the entire value as well. But Ms. Ayimedu, I'll come to you in wrapping up. Thank you. That's Senor Hosi, who's an economy and policy analyst, joining us this morning on the phone. Ms. Ayimedu, you have the final word for me on this, just Eric, going forward, briefly.
I think that this is a development that we shouldn't have analysts and economists or people minded to laud the government of the the Bank of Ghana actually on this. It's a trajectory that if we keep doing, we'll come to a point where when the real catastrophe happens, these analysts will not find their face. We should reverse it. When we are drawing examples from Chile and the rest who have kept a supposed negative equity on their central bank's books, it's because they were in a regime. They are not fighting domestic situations like inflation. They are fighting huge dollarization problems. But we are fighting inflation, and we want to collapse the Bank of Ghana to fight inflation. It's ununderstandable. You cannot take this. And let's accept this, that this conversation is welcome. And I like how today civil society and academia and even politicians are coming to the table to discuss this matter, looking at the cost-benefit analysis of this whole use of FOMO.
Right.
I think it's a step in the right direction. We shouldn't be just dismissing it and say, oh well, it's a going concern. There's nothing like going concern for an economic unit. The Bank of Ghana is an economic body. Its soundness is as much important as its purposes. Thank you.
Thank you as well for speaking to us. That's Nana Ayimedu Beko, is an economist and financial analyst as well, joining us on the telephone line. Before that was Senor Hosi, as well, joining us on what is an interesting conversation in relation to the BOG and its financials. I'll go for this quick break. When we return, we have a special guest in studio, and we'll get into all of the conversations here for you on the 3FM Sunrise. Stay with us.
Ghana, get ready for the ultimate athletics showdown.